how do I make the best life? So I want to dig into that. And I want to start with this. Let's imagine I'm your son. I'm about 16 years old. So I'm not quite really into adulthood, but I'm figuring out my way. And you could only tell me one thing, one tip, one tidbit on how to live the good life, right? One piece of advice out of all this research. What would it be?
Yeah, such a good question. And what I want to say is partly why it's such a good question is that we do want to think about the differences across the lifespan. So a 16-year-old, I would say something different, certainly to my son, than I might say to someone who's 60 years old. So at 16, I think what's important about the good life is thinking about what's important, what you think 16-year-olds and adolescents really worried about moral questions and doing the right thing. So what do you think is important? I think it's really important to help people. I think the environment is in a crisis. I really want to do something about it. That's terrific that you have that passion. Can you imagine a way as you progress through high school, maybe go to college, that you can do that kind of work? And when you do that work, can you imagine doing it with people that will also excite you and you'll enjoy being with? So one of the messages from the book is that, finding your path in life, finding meaning and purpose in work, really important. But work itself is also important as a source of connections for us. And I want my 16-year-old to be thinking about the connections he currently has and that I hope he'll have in the future. So what about your friends? What are they thinking about doing? Where do your friends fit in with what you imagine in the future? So I want them also to nurture the relationships in their life. And that includes their friends. I'll also say my kids are unusual in this. They're older now. They're in their 20s. Did you call your grandparents recently? Did you talk to them? They were 16 years old at one time. And I think you'd find it interesting talking to grandma about her decisions about work and career and family. Have you ever asked her about that? I bet she'd be willing to talk to you about that. So that would be the kind of conversation I'd have with my son. And I did have as they were growing up. I have two boys.
I can imagine. So they get to ask Yoda all the questions about.
Well, yeah. So certainly to them, I'm far from Yoda. Right. Yeah.
I can imagine. You said something interesting, which I wouldn't have thought of, which is this advice changes as we age. What kind of things did the study reveal about the way we think differently as we age about what a good life is?
Yeah. So this relates to a question we talked about earlier, Chris, that the field of adult development is a relatively recent one in psychology. We used to think that it was just kids that developed, and studies like ours that have followed people through adulthood, we realize that people change. So one of the remarkable things that I think your listeners might be surprised, I was surprised when I read the research. If we look at how happy people are across the lifespan, it turns out as you get older from middle age until late life, people get happier. So old people turn out to be among the happiest people at any age. And that's a remarkable thing when we think about the challenges of aging, right? We have to deal with the specter of death. We have to deal with our bodies changing and having more problems, our friends passing away. So there's some remarkable things that you notice when you follow people across adulthood. And I think our life stages are important, that in our teens, we're trying to figure out meaning and purpose and big questions. In our 20s, we're kind of trying to pursue a path in life that's meaningful for us in terms of work. We're trying to figure out our way in intimate relationships and whether that can be a part of our experience or not. And things change. In midlife, we may be stuck in a rut, feeling like there's some predictability in our life, but it's also boring in a way, that our life has lost some of its meaning. Later in life, really important to feel like you're connected to the world in a way that people will remember you, that you'll leave a legacy. And for a lot of people, what that means is they lean into doing things for younger people, mentoring or guiding them, or having conversations with their grandkids about what the old days are like. So as we age, the things that are most important to us change. Our perch changes in a certain way. And that's part of what we mean by these sort of generational divide and the friction that comes with that. But it's also an opportunity to connect, right? So interesting that I'm teaching at a university. 20-year-olds have very different worldviews than I do about certain things. And one of the great things about teaching is I get to learn about those views and why they hold views that are very different. So it's an opportunity for us to learn about each other.